back to Weekly Briefing, everybody. Well, now it is time for your favorite part of the show, the panel discussion. President Joe Biden called Trump supporters garbage on a conference call on Tuesday. This came in stark contrast to Vice President Kamala Harris's message of unity at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. Take a listen.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
You see, what Donald Trump has never understood is that e pluribus unum, out of many, one, isn't just a phrase on a dollar bill. It is a living truth about the heart of our nation. Our democracy doesn't require us to agree on everything.
Donna, this is an interesting comment because Mr. Biden came out and made this comment, but then he posted on X. He tried to walk it back. Quote, earlier today I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump supporters at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think of to describe it. Was that an effective walk back of his comments?
It wasn't even a walk back or an apology. This is a guy who ran as president, as the unifier. We've heard this already before. He said he was going to unify the country. He was going to be the middle person. And then on day one, they spent every hour vilifying and dehumanizing anybody that didn't line up with their agenda. I mean, you're talking about dehumanizing MAGA supporters, okay? But not just that. He turned kids against their parents. He turned trans women against women, biological women. He turned men against women, white people against black people. I mean, this is a party who has done nothing but divide our country every opportunity they have.
So maybe it's par for the course.
Parents were somehow the enemy of their school and their children. This is outrageous. That's what they do. And if you think that what we saw was mild, just wait a minute, because she's going to be 10 times worse.
Well, it's interesting, Claire. Donna may have a point here, and this may be a case actually of deja vu all over again. There's a soundbite I want to play for you from Hillary Clinton. Maybe we can hear that.
You know, to just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
So, Claire, it seems like there may be a pattern here. Is that correct?
There just might be. What I found especially lame coming out of the White House, trying to clean up after the President Joe Biden comment about garbage, was that they tried, I guess, in the text that was released, to put a comma or an apostrophe in the word supporters, so as to pretend that what President Biden really meant was not the people, the supporters of Donald Trump, but rather their rhetoric. It didn't work. He was following in the long pattern, as we're seeing, of denigrating and name-calling, trash-talking, if you will, of Donald Trump supporters.
Lee, one thing about Donald Trump is he is not a man of subtlety, and he made a point of this, a point that could not be missed by anybody. It's kind of interesting. Let's watch that Trump soundbite.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
So shades of McDonald's there. Lee, what do you make of that?
He's having way too much fun this campaign cycle. That was just an incredible moment for the Trump campaign. And I think going back to Kamala Harris's comments that she's for all Americans, she said the right thing, but I don't think anyone's buying it. She's just coming off of a speech where she referred to President Trump as a fascist dictator. Her running mate referred to the Trump event at Madison Square Garden as a Nazi rally. And when you look at Kamala Harris's policies, you really have to ask, is she truly for all Americans? She's advocating for raising taxes on millions of American families, as borders are. She has let more than 12.5 million people into this country, and she's opposing things like education freedom for parents. So we have to ask ourselves, are her policies truly for the American people? I think we'll find out on Tuesday what
So there's
Americans
a real
think.
record she's having to defend, is what you're saying, right?
That's exactly right.
Well, we'll see how that works out here in probably just a few hours. Meanwhile, with only a few days left until the presidential election, the polls show that both former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are in a dead heat. According to Real Clear Politics polling averages, Trump is up by 0.4% nationally and is leading in 5 swing states by small margins. Republican strategist Leslie Sanchez says that Trump is building a coalition of voters who are fed up with the Democratic Party. Take a listen.
There's so many Democrats, about 30% in the research I've done, that were frustrated with the Democratic Party, working class voters who wanted to find an alternative.
Claire, this is interesting because 538 has Harris up supposedly in 3 swing states, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin. Does that ring true to you?
You know, I really don't know how much credence to place in these polling numbers. When we do compare them, though, to polling numbers in the past 2 presidential elections, we see that it is at least recorded to be much tighter this time than either in 2020 or in 2016. For what that means, it is said sometimes that President Trump tends to poll under his true numbers of support. But I think it is notable that, in particular, in all of these swing states or these battleground states, that however small the margin, he's being, recorded as being up by a point or so. The last point that I would make is with the betting averages. Those I wasn't even very familiar with this, but when those organizations or groups that bet on elections are putting money down on which one they think is going to come out ahead, Trump is way ahead with the betting team, the betting groups that put money down.
It's interesting, Lee. I'm wondering if Ms. Harris can win if she does not win the, I guess you call them the blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Can she win if she doesn't take those?
I don't think she can. And it's all going to come out to turnout on Election Day. I think also the early voting numbers are really fascinating to look at. And we'll learn a lot from that moving forward. The other poll, though, that I would point to is America headed in the right direction as a country? And if you look at Real Clear Politics, the average 64% of Americans say no, we're not headed in the right direction as a country. I think that has major implications for this election.
Donna, what are you hearing?
You know what? People are not going to vote against their own economic interests, even though that's what everybody wants them to do. In these blue states, what you've seen is the liberal policies, especially the from the Harris-Biden administration, has actually targeted and destroyed the lives of so many working class people. I mean, in Michigan, they've targeted the automobile industry, and they're basically going to put them out of the job. The first thing they did was cancel the pipeline. Most of those battleground states are working class people, and every policy they've enacted has been designed to destroy their livelihoods. I think that he's further ahead, but they brought out all these celebrities and stars and whomever to embarrass them into not saying that, I'm actually going to vote for Trump, because there's a pressure. If you say that you're a Trump supporter, especially if you're blue collar, for people to vilify you and dehumanize you.
Well, we may have shades of Ronald Reagan here. I want to play a soundbite for you, Claire, and get your reaction.
Simple question. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? I'm here today with a message of hope for all Americans. With your vote in this election, I will end inflation. I will stop the invasion of criminals coming into our country, and I will bring back the American dream. We need the American dream.
Claire, they don't call him the closer for nothing. Is that an effective closing argument? Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
Yeah, I think it really is. Now, as it was for President Reagan all those years ago. I think Donna made the exact right point, that people vote where they are, how it affects them in their own homes, their own family budgets, their own jobs. their own industries, their own cities. That's what people are thinking about. And I think that's a very effective point to make by the former President Donald Trump. And that, I think, is how people will vote.
Lee, how are they going to answer that question?
It's about families and what they're feeling. It's the price of gas, groceries, and housing costs. Gas prices are up $1 from 4 years ago. A gallon of milk costs about 75 cents more than it did a year ago. And look at mortgage rates, about 4.5 percentage points higher right now than 4 years ago. That's going to matter in this election.
Very good. We shall see when we return who will win the majority in both the House and the Senate. Find out after the break. Welcome back to Weekly Briefing, everybody. Well, all of the seats in the House and 34 seats in the U.S. Senate are up for grabs next week. 538's crystal ball projects that Republicans win the House 53 of 100 times, as the GOP flips the Senate 88 of 100 times as well. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane says races in New York will be key to knowing who will win the House. Take a listen.
This is the battleground state, unequivocally so. There are at least 5 or 6 very competitive U.S. House races, at least that many in New York.
Lee, what do we see happening with the House? It seems like the House could hang in the balance here.
It all comes down to a couple of key races. And again, voter turnout is key. I would mention, although these races aren't getting as many headlines as the presidential race, it's just as important for the direction of our country. If you remember, when President Trump first was elected to the White House, Republicans held control of Congress. That is what enabled them to get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, a once-in-a-generation tax reform package through. That's set to expire at the end of next year if Congress does nothing. And so the result of the House and Senate races will be critical for the future of our country.
Claire, I'm wondering if this could come down to a couple seats in New York State and 2 or 3 or 4 seats in North Carolina and a couple seats in California.
It really could. You know, as Lee is saying, some of these races are very close, and these are key districts where the races are being contested. So we're just going to have to hang on for a few more days to find out which way that goes.
Donna, what do you think will happen in the Senate?
Well, you know, I think the Republicans will take control of the Senate. You know, the fact that these races in some of the most liberal areas are competitive shows that the conservatives are making a good case to the American people. And we are really in a position to be able to get some work done because people see that the policies that have been offered by the left have been destroying us.
Lee, it's interesting. We're seeing an interesting phenomenon here where you have 3 Senate races, I think Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, where the incumbent Democrat is running an ad in which they feature Donald Trump. Is that a good sign for Democrats taking back, or holding, I should say, the U.S. Senate? Does that mean that the Republicans have an advantage here?
I think Democrats are definitely scared of the impact that Donald Trump is going to have in these battleground states. And, you know, this is what everything hangs in the balance when you talk about states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio. I think we're going to have to, again, hold tight and see how this plays out. The strategy is one thing, but again, I'd point back to the policy implications that these races have for the direction of our country over the next few years.
Claire, who wins Pennsylvania?
That's a real toss-up right now, isn't it? And all kinds of legal challenges, allegations of fraudulent balloting and so forth already popping up. Let's go with Donald Trump for Pennsylvania.
Very good. Donna, you want to make a prediction of how many seats the Republicans have after the election?
Well, I think that they're going to hold the majority because I think that people, the
Take the
American
majority,
people,
Meg.
they're going to take the majority because I think people want to see things done and they want
Let me
to see
pin you
it going
down.
in a different
51,
direction.
52, 53
50,
seats?
53 seats. I'm going to
53
say
seats?
yes. I say
A bold
53
projection,
seats
a
because
bold
I
projection.
think that people want to have some relief in their lives, especially financially, and that's not going to happen if it swings the other way.
It does seem like it is a change election, so we shall see. Meanwhile, on Wednesday, the United States Supreme Court ruled to allow Virginia to resume purging non-citizen voter registrations. This followed a lower court ruling that Virginia had to put 1,600 voters back on its rolls. Governor Glenn Youngkin said he did this to make sure election rules were being followed. Take a listen.
My executive order at the beginning of August codified a process for a confirmation back from all of our electoral folks that the various laws and rules and practices that are in place were being followed.
Claire, fascinating turn of events here. The governor observed this 90-day quiet period. He took his action before that 90-day period when you're not supposed to take anybody on or off the rolls, just to kind of leave things settle. What do you make of this? I mean, it took the Supreme Court to fix this problem, right?
Right. Well, here's the point. U.S. Code 18, U.S. Code 611 states very clearly that it is illegal for someone who is not a citizen to be voting in federal elections.
If it's so clear, why is it a big problem, though?
Well, because people are trying to get around that somehow or other. And in Virginia, the point there in particular is that these 1,600 persons who found their way onto the voter rolls of Virginia actually had self-identified as non-citizens when they apparently signed up maybe through the DMV, the motor voter procedure. And so they self-identified as not a citizen. So, of course, the governor, Governor Glenn Youngkin, went ahead and removed them from the voter rolls. Now, I think the Supreme Court had to step in, but the case is not totally settled yet because this is an immediate emergency ruling. It stays the lower court's ruling that would have forced the 1,600 to remain on Virginia's voter rolls. But in the meantime, additional filings have to be made and additional rulings have to come out. I think in the end, though, given the law and given their self-identification as non-citizens, I think that it will come out that they are duly removed from the voter rolls.
Donna,
Oh,
if you walk down the street, if you walk out on the street today and you ask anybody who walks by, do you think U.S. citizens should be able to, you think non-U.S. citizens should be able to vote in a U.S. election? What would they say?
They would say absolutely not because they don't want their voice.
So why is this an issue?
It's an issue because you can't cheat that way. I mean, this is like saying, listen, you fired 5 of your employees, but you have to keep them on your payroll. No company in America would do that. But if you want to make sure that you have people that vote that shouldn't, because what happens is after the election is over, the Supreme Court is not going to do anything about it. So if these people vote when they already said they're not entitled, well, if someone votes in there for them, that they're not entitled to vote, they're not going to do anything in terms of changing the election after the results are already there. And that's why they want to keep them on the roll.
Lee, it's interesting because the Justice Department and a coalition of private groups actually sued the Commonwealth of Virginia to keep these non-citizens on the voter roll. Is there politics going on here, do you suppose?
Well, it's been completely baffling to watch the media coverage of this, as if banning non-citizens from voting is controversial in the minds of anybody. And at the end of the day, we have to remember this is about protecting the votes of American citizens. It's about making it, as many have said, easy to vote and hard to cheat. And there are some really good safeguards in place to make this effective. I mean, it's not just the non-citizens who have said that they're non-citizens to the DMV. It's also folks who have passed away or moved to other states. And let's not forget, if you are to be removed from Virginia's voter rolls, you receive notice. You have 2 weeks to provide documentation to show that you are eligible to vote, and you can remain on the voter rolls. If you can't do that, you're removed. It's about protecting the votes of American citizens.
Yes.
You know, actually, to pick up on Lee's point right there, in Virginia, that person who may be provisionally removed from the voter rolls can indeed, on Election Day, vote provisionally with a provisional ballot.
So there are protections, apparently. Yeah.
There are safeguards in Virginia.
Well, we shall see how that turns out. We are very close indeed. Meanwhile, panelists, we have about a minute left, and it is time for our crystal ball question. In 2016, Hillary Clinton called Trump supporters baskets of deplorables, and now Joe Biden is calling them garbage. Panelists, gaze into your crystal ball and tell me what new name Democrats will come up with to describe supporters of Mr. Trump.
We're going to be super predators.
Super predators.
Super predators. So everybody has to be afraid of us because we're somehow going to be, roaming the streets trying to destroy the property. So that's what we're going to be.
Very good. Claire.
I had a tough time with this one. They've already called us fascists, Nazis. Trump supporters are deplorables, as Donna just said, and garbage. They're not historically well-versed enough to think of any other mass murderers like Genghis Khan or the Mongol horde or anything. And in any case, Trump has been awfully effective in trolling them, particularly with the garbage truck yesterday. They can't call them communists because, well, that's who they are.
Maybe capitalists.
Maybe capitalists.
Maybe. Who knows? Lee.
Well, we're headed into the holiday season. I do agree. It's going to be hard to top garbage or a basket of deplorables. But I could see President Biden having a slip at maybe some of the White House festivities, calling us turkeys, or, for Christmas, there could be something along the lines of the Grinch or Ebenezer Scrooge. Trump supporters are deserving
go with the holiday theme,
of coal in their stockings.
Very good. Very good. A lump of coal and a hole in the stockings. Who knows? Well, that is all the time we have, panelists. Thank you for joining us. When we return, Lee Greenwood talks about his song, God Bless the USA, 40 years after it was released. Don't touch that dial.